For Jonathan Halley, control wasn't just a business strategy. It was a survival mechanism. A titan of industry, he had built an empire on foresight and calculated risk. But 3 years ago, a reckless driver running a red light had shattered that illusion of control, leaving his 12-year-old son, Lucas, paralyzed from the waist down. The accident didn't just break Lucas's spine. It fractured Jonathan's world. Since that day, the Halley estate had become less of a home and more of a revolving door for medical staff. Nurses, therapists, and aides cycled through the mansion like seasonal drifts, some competent, some indifferent, but none permanent. Jonathan had learned the hard way that a paycheck ensures attendance, not compassion. He had seen the shortcuts: a rough transfer from wheelchair to bed, a raised voice when patients were thin, a therapist scrolling through her phone during rehabilitation sessions. Each incident chipped away at Jonathan's faith in others. So he escalated. He installed high-definition, discrete security cameras in every corner of the residence embedded in bookshelves, disguised in light fixtures feeds that streamed directly to his private server. He told himself it was necessary vigilance. But in truth, he rarely watched the footage anymore. Viewing the silent, monochromatic struggle of his son's daily life felt like picking at a scab that refused to heal. When the previous caregiver resigned due to emotional burnout, Jonathan processed the replacement with clinical detachment. The new hire was Elena. During the interview, she was unremarkable in the most professional sense, resumed simple, references sincere. She didn't gawk at the vaulted ceilings or the art collection. She asked only one peculiar question: does Lucas have a relationship with music? Jonathan, buried in logistics, barely registered the inquiry. The first week under Elena's watch was quiet. The house was immaculate, meals were nutritious, and schedules were executed with military precision. Jonathan, barricaded in his study with international conference calls, saw little of her. But he noticed a shift in Lucas. The boy, who had retreated into a shell of monosyllabic answers and vacant stares, began lingering in the kitchen. He seemed to track Elena's movements with a dormant curiosity, drawn to the soft humming that accompanied her work. One Tuesday evening, Jonathan returned early, exhausted by a merger negotiation. Driven by an instinct he couldn't name, he pulled up the camera feeds on his tablet. He braced himself for negligence. What he saw instead froze him in his chair. And the screen, Elena wasn't cleaning. She was sitting cross-legged on the floor beside Lucas's wheelchair. No therapy equipment, no charts. She was simply existing in his space, matching the rhythm of her breathing to his. After a long silence, she leaned in and whispered something the microphone didn't catch. Lucas's shoulders, perpetually hunched in defense, relaxed. Jonathan zoomed in. Elena began tapping a rhythm on the cool tile floor. Soft, syncopated beat. She handed Lucas 2 wooden cooking spoons. The boy looked at them, confused, then tentatively tapped them together. Elena smiled, not the customer service smile of a paid employee, but a genuine, radiant expression of encouragement. She tapped back. A conversation in rhythm began to form. Clumsy at first, then locking into a groove. And then it happened. Lucas threw his head back and laughed. It was a full, uninhibited sound that Jonathan realized, with a pang of guilt, he hadn't heard in years. This wasn't in the care plan. This was connection. Over the next week, Jonathan became obsessed with the feeds, not as a warden, but as a student. He watched Elena treat Lucas not as a patient to be managed, but as a partner. He saw her turning tedious range of motion exercises into adventure narratives. She didn't lift him. She guided him, forcing him to reclaim his own strength. Then came the night that dismantled Jonathan's remaining defenses. The living room camera captured a moment of crisis. Lucas was sobbing, fists striking the armrests of his chair. "I hate this!" he screamed, his voice cracking. "I hate being stuck in this thing." Jonathan's impulse was to rush downstairs, to fix it, to silence the pain. But he hesitated, watching the screen. Elena didn't offer hollow platitudes. She didn't say, "It will get better." She knelt directly in his line of sight and said, simply, "I know." She took Lucas's hands and placed them on her own legs. "Tell me what you miss," she asked softly. "Running," Lucas choked out. Elena nodded. "Then feel this. This is movement." "Different doesn't mean gone." She began to march in place, slowly narrating the biomechanics of the step, the impact of the heel, the roll of the toe, inviting Lucas to visualize the sensation through her muscles. "Your body remembers, Lucas. We will remind it together. Jonathan sat in the dark of his office, tears streaming down his face. His wealth had bought the best doctors and the most advanced security, but it had failed to buy hope. Elena had provided that for free. The next morning, Jonathan summoned Elena to his study. She stood with her hands clasped, perhaps expecting a reprimand for deviating from the schedule. Jonathan struggled to find the words. He confessed about the surveillance. He told her everything he had witnessed. Elena listened, her expression unreadable, until she said, "I'm glad. I'm glad you saw the real him." Jonathan offered to double her salary, to put her on a guaranteed contract for life. Elena gently shook her head. "I don't do this for the contract, Mr. Hale. I do it because he deserves to know he's still whole." The cameras remained, but the context changed. Jonathan no longer watched to police his staff. He watched to learn how to be the father his son needed. The silence of the mansion was replaced by the sounds of rehabilitation and life. Jonathan learned that while money provides defense, only trust provides safety. And sometimes, the heroes we need are the ones we never knew were watching out for us.